Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Mrs. Pinky Thoughts. I am your host, Nicole Pinkston, and today's guest is Alexandre Lores. We are here to talk about cryptocurrency in my new series we call People Who Activate. That are people who are actually getting involved in different niches and different areas. And some people think when I say activate, I mean running for politics, but no. I mean, I will have a couple candidates come through here and sit down and chat with me. But we have people of all walks of life. I had a couple moms, a couple of political commentators, parents and teachers, things like that. And Alex is going to talk to us about crypto. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm fantastic, Miss Pinky. Thank you so
Oh,
much for having me on here.
oh, thank you. Before we get started, I want to do some little housekeeping work for you guys. Around the edges of my show are all of my social media stuff from my Facebook on down to my Instagram if you're trying to contact me. Also, I am the media manager at theconsciousconservativemedia.net, and some people are coming through that website. It's right in the middle for to see this show. If you go over there and you register today, you will be able to be signed up for our Conscious Conservative Media Virtual Summit that is coming this weekend from May 6th through the 8th. And also, if you would like to subscribe to this channel, do so now. Hit the like and the subscribe and hit the notification so whenever you get a new show, you be in the know. Also, if you could be so kind and you want to bless this channel so we can keep it going, my donation tabs are at the top. Miss Pinky, PayPal at the top, and Cash App's over here. So let's jump into it. Alex, can you tell everybody about yourself, what it is that you do? Give us a little background.
Thank you so much. So I'm a full-time crypto analyst, the founder of thelatestblock.com. It's BLOCK. And I am also with a group. I'm the director of blockchain market research at Quantum Economics. That's a tongue twister for you. But I essentially study and report on crypto markets full-time. Um, So the best place to follow me is either on Twitter, that's like my name with an underscore, so Alexander_Lores on Twitter. And that's my name is spelled in a funny way. You could say Alexander, but it's spelled like Alexandre, the French spelling, DRE at the end. The other thing to do to follow me, check out thelatestblock.com, and you can subscribe to the newsletter at thelatestblock.com/subscribe, free weekly newsletter where I discuss news in the markets. And I have a strong focus on educational content, also news content, but it really is part of my goal to help 1 million people achieve financial independence. So that includes both personal finance and as well as incorporating Bitcoin and some other elements of crypto as well as traditional markets, but financial education as well. So I'm using my website to help me bridge the gap education-wise to introduce people to that. And yes, that's an introduction to me.
Awesome. That is great. I don't really talk too much about my own background as much, but I do have a BA in business. I decided to get a BA in business because a lot of people want to jump into entrepreneurship and then they tell you the statistic where all businesses or a lot of businesses fail in the first year. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of time, money, or energy to start a business and just fail. So whatever I'm going to get into, let me go to school and so I took my money. I'm an Army vet. I took my GI Bill and then I jumped into the business degree now. And now they're like, well, everybody has a business and blah, blah, blah. But what I learned from school that you don't really learn as a business person is these little tips about, how it's not as hard or difficult. You don't have to be some kind of sciencey type person. You can just jump right in. Tell us how you got specifically into crypto. Like, you're known as somebody that talks about crypto. Like you said, you started on finance. Did you start with trades? Did you start with stocks? How did you get hooked into crypto?
I became interested in stocks when Robinhood came out, or when I found Robinhood in 2016. The market was going well, so I was doing a little trading in stocks. And then a friend of mine introduced me to Bitcoin as well as a few other cryptocurrencies, and said, "You got to check this out." And I'd never heard of it, or I think I had maybe heard the word a few times and didn't know anything about it. And then once I figured out what it was, I was hooked. When I was going back to school, as a kid, I love math and I love finance and I love computers. So when you're able to put all those things in one, I became hooked. So, and for those who don't know, Bitcoin essentially is a decentralized democratic form of money. It's not backed by a government or a central bank. It's backed by computers on the internet. Anyone is actually able to set up a computer and essentially hook into the network and help maintain it and keep it secure. So it's a decentralized system, and unlike modern central banking, you can't be essentially blocked off of the system or penalized for either not being rich or not being connected to the people that are on the kind of the inside or the right side or so on, right? So I also kind of first I was trading, so I got addicted to like, okay, let's make money, and then it's exciting. But when I really understood the technology more, I really stuck around for that.
So when you talk about that Bitcoin is decentralized from any kind of government, there's no owners, or do anybody even know who created Bitcoin or where it came from, or did it just pop out of thin air? Like, do you guys have any kind of idea who started Bitcoin and how did it get to 40 grand and have such a jump above all the other coins? And now we have this like war of being the best lower coin. Like, how did that come about?
That's a great question. So Bitcoin was created by a person or persons with the pseudonym of Satoshi Nakamoto, which whoever that person or that identity that was sending messages was sending it from an email, issued what was called the Bitcoin white paper, an 8 or 9 page introduction to Bitcoin and how it worked, onto a cryptographer's mailing list, because Bitcoin uses cryptography. Back in, I think it was October 31st, 2008. So that was the first introduction of Bitcoin. And in 2009, the Bitcoin network was actually started. The first Bitcoin transaction was sent over the network. And that person disappeared, a person or persons, with his group of persons. They stopped, issuing communication. Exactly 11 years. Now it's a few days, but a few days ago, it was announced it was 11 years since they stopped communicating. So whether they disappeared deliberately, I mean, I could see why they'd want to disappear. At that time, Bitcoin was small, and reportedly that somebody involved with the project, he said that he or she received a message from the CIA, and they were never heard from again. So we could all jump down rabbit holes on that. We don't know, but what we do know is the creator was Satoshi Nakamoto. He turned over all the code to a team of computer programmers. There's a group called the Bitcoin core developers, and they do maintain the network. And then there's other parts of the network, but essentially, yeah, that's who created it. Bitcoin, to say it's the first cryptocurrency is not 100% accurate. It's really the first cryptocurrency that became adopted. There was a couple other computer programmers that had developed a few precursors or concepts of a peer-to-peer decentralized network. There's about 3 major contributors who actually later became part of the Bitcoin core developers. But essentially, right after the global financial crisis, I think the figure I might have wrong, but I think it was $5 trillion was wiped out from people's retirement accounts. So tremendous distrust existed at the time, and still does today, in centralized institutions that were trusted with people's money, banks and governments, right? So right after that, 2009, Bitcoin started. So that was born out of that spirit. So first adopters were mainly like this cypherpunks, the coders themselves and libertarians, and that was a long time ago. So a lot has changed, and like anything, that early adopters started coming in, and then it went from only weirdos or computer programmers or libertarians are going to touch Bitcoin, or anarchists or something, or coders on the dark web. And now, as time moved on, more and more people have adopted Bitcoin, more and more companies. Now you can track a list of corporations that hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So one other factor of Bitcoin, which contributes to the price rising, some things you can't control. Money is essentially an agreement that there's value, right? Whether it's gold, silver, pieces of paper, Bitcoin, or any other cryptocurrency, there has to be an agreement that there's value. And if I pay you in Bitcoin, you can turn around tomorrow and pay someone else in Bitcoin. If you have the confidence that someone else will take it, you'll be confident in taking it. So in the case of currency of a government, we call fiat currency, because since 1971, the U.S. Separated. They were the last country to separate from the gold standard. Essentially, money issued by governments is no longer backed by any commodity. So it's completely dependent on the trust of people in that government. Bitcoin, similar to other forms of money, is based on agreement. The thing that sharply differentiates Bitcoin from government, funds, fiat currencies, aside from the decentralization factor, the other factor is there will be exactly 21 million Bitcoin ever created. It's worked into the code. It was built in by Satoshi and others who worked on it. And there's exactly 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be created. Without getting into too many complex details, there's about 19 million that have been created so far. Every 4 years, the new amount of Bitcoin being created, it's being created at an exact rate, cuts in half for approximately 4 years. And somewhere around
I don't mean to cut you off. I want to back up a bit. When you say create, you mean somebody is sitting behind a computer and generating code and that becomes the coin? Like, since it's not a physical, like paper dollar or coin, you got to kind of back up a bit and explain it. So when you say created, you mean the team of developers are sitting behind a computer and they are making the coin? So
actually, no. So that's a great question. I'll back up. So the one thing to remember, again, 21 million will ever be created. It's a hard cap. Like, it can't go above that. Unlike, at the Federal Reserve, the government needs money. They can just sit there and essentially they're not even printing. They're just typing in ones and zeros. So Bitcoin is secure. I mentioned it was secured by a network of computers on the internet. Those computers use cryptography to solve these math problems. They essentially secure the network. The code was already written years ago. So over every specified unit of time, the computers that are maintaining the Bitcoin network are rewarded with new Bitcoin that gets created. It's created at a certain speed, and it maintains more or less that exact speed, and every 4 years cuts in half the amount of new Bitcoin being created. So these computers secure the network, they confirm transactions, and they're paid essentially for their work in new Bitcoin that is created.
So they basically are resupplying their own self at a current rate that no one can come in and just increase or decrease that rate. It's all up to whatever that programmer or developer team made.
Right, like the computers are separate from the programmers that originally created the code and they're still maintaining it. The computers themselves, give their hard drive space, solve the algorithms. They support the network in return. They get a certain cut of the new Bitcoin being created. And they cannot change how much Bitcoin is being created. They would have to Bitcoin created a solution to what's called the double spend problem, or counterfeiting money, right? You can't counterfeit Bitcoin. If you wanted to essentially double spend the money or change that amount, you would have to have control of 51% of the Bitcoin network. Which would cost so much money it would be prohibitive, and is essentially impossible.
Now you said this is secure because no one has access. You have to have so much access to the code. You have to have 51%, like you said. And like with regular money, all you have to do is be in pocket with some politician. They can go to the Fed and just print out money. But the reverse happened just now with Russia and the issue with them going in Ukraine. Now this is still centralized money. It's still your cash, even though it's on a debit card or at a bank somewhere. They shut down letting people use Apple Pay to get on to their transaction. They were like, well, see, this is why I don't want Bitcoin, because if that happened, but I was thinking to myself, that can happen with, your debit card that you got now and the same money. So how do you reassure people that this whole system, I understand just a bit because my husband is a software developer, but if you're somebody that don't understand computers or typing, or you may be a boomer or something, how do you explain to somebody that their wallet won't just be missing one day if they put their Bitcoin somewhere in someone like Robinhood or some other company? How do they know that they're currency is secure is what I'm asking.
Great question. So there's two different ways essentially to store Bitcoin. One, you can give it to someone else to store, or you can store it yourself. If you give it to someone else, there's no guarantee. There's a whole network of companies that are essentially banks. So especially Robinhood, Coinbase, they hold your Bitcoin. If they get word from the IRS that you're bad or that you owe them money and they seize your account or they lock your funds, they can do that just like a bank. The way to ensure you control your own Bitcoin is you get what's called a wallet, a digital wallet or a hardware wallet. A hardware wallet looks like a flash drive. There's a couple companies that make them. Trezor, Ledger are the more well-known ones. And essentially you have two things. You have an address, similar to your house or your computer has an address on the network, but you have a Bitcoin address where you receive Bitcoin, and you have a passcode, essentially a series of phrases that unlocks the ability to send the Bitcoin to someone else. So you can even write that down on a piece of paper. If you have the address and passcode on a piece of paper, your computer can be destroyed, your house can be burned down. If you hold that paper or you memorize that information, you can access your Bitcoin at a future time. So in the situations in Russia and Ukraine, essentially they were shut off from digital banking services. In Canada, the government shut off anyone they suspected who was supporting the trucking protesters, right, from the banking system. They shut down anyone who was sending crypto or Bitcoin through an exchange, through a centralized company they could control. If you have your own custody, you have your own password, whether your wallet is digital or your wallet is physical or even a paper wallet, right? Meaning you've written down your password, your data, you have control. Whoever has those keys, that passphrase, can potentially control your Bitcoin. So if you feel that many feel this way, that they wouldn't trust another with their funds, they invest in Bitcoin or they hold Bitcoin because they don't trust centralized authority, they would want to get essentially a hardware wallet. Looks like a flash drive or even a paper wallet, and put their Bitcoin in that address and save it. So that way they would have control over their assets. They could not be blocked by government at the border, short of their own person being, arrested and tortured. There'd be no way of getting that Bitcoin without the passphrase.
Okay, so my question and why I'm thinking about this is I didn't come into cryptocurrency through 2008. I was still overseas, so I didn't know about the recession. Everything was coming back. It was already kind of going by the time I got back. So by the time I saw it, it seemed like it was too much money. One Bitcoin was 30 grand or something like that at the time. I was like, oh, I don't even want to bother with it. But then they came out with other ones. And then the one that everybody liked is Dogecoin. They came out with it. It was like under a penny before. I said, I'm just going to play around with it, through $10 in there. And then it took off. And then we had the whole going to the moon situation where everybody was just joking. It was a meme. Then you had people arguing, it's a shit coin. It's not a real coin. And you have all that going back and forth. So how has your reaction been to the creation of newer, more modern coins, kind of like Ethereum, Shibu, all of those different ones?
That's a great question. I would say for beginners, you did a great thing. You put in like $10. You put in an amount of money you didn't care about. If it went to zero, you wouldn't be, concerned or stressed out in your life. That's mostly the rest of crypto. I would call speculation. There's a few more established ones like Ethereum that have specific use cases. People are building applications on top of it, non-fungible tokens, NFTs. There's a number of use cases for a couple of the major cryptocurrencies, but there's 19,000 cryptocurrencies right now. So it's a bit of a mess. It's become the do your own, Silicon Valley IPO type of really madhouse, right? So out of all those, I think 99% are probably complete garbage. It's important to learn more about it before you touch any of that stuff, because there's essentially speculation, right? Bitcoin is well established, well supported, battle tested cryptocurrency. Ethereum's also been around for years and is a lot of utility and things being built on them. A number of other cryptocurrencies are more on kind of very risky speculation side, and some are outright scams. So one should be aware of that as you're navigating the space. And I would suggest the beginner just buy some Bitcoin and do a little bit of what you did. Buy something for a bit and see what happens, because it's very volatile. It's new, so it might drop 50%. Like, can you handle it? You won't know that unless you're actually holding some, and then you see your reaction. If you don't care, Bitcoin and other digital assets like Ethereum, you get the gains long term. Anyone who's bought Bitcoin and held it for more than 5 years, it's almost impossible to wind up losing on it based on the trend it's gone. No one can predict future results, and this isn't financial advice, but essentially, the more risk you take, the more possible it is to get reward. So Dogecoin was at a time where a lot of these meme coins became really popular. At the same time, the market's tightened up a bit right now. So Bitcoin's a bit down, but Shiba Inu is down, like massively. People are using it less because it's a less speculative, exciting time. When the market goes back and is doing great, there becomes more people are willing to risk more and go into more speculative things. I'm most interested in the innovation, so I see Bitcoin as a very important factor in helping you secure freedom. Why I think it's important to learn about Bitcoin and to get some of it just as really a savings account. And we can get into the reasons. There's a couple of reasons for that. But I would say, as a comparison between Bitcoin and crypto, Bitcoin was the first. It's the largest. It's as volatile as it is. It's far more stable than the others. If you don't, most people can't handle the amount of fear and greed that hits them when the coin is going up and down. So I would just get educated first. I provide educational materials in my newsletter. Again, I'll plug myself. You can sign up for the newsletter, thelatestblock.com/subscribe. But get some, hold it, see what your reaction is. Put a chunk of money that's more than $10, but not so much that you need it, And I think look, the other factor we can get into, kind of my purpose of helping people achieve financial independence. Inflation's at 8.5% over the last 12 months. You're going to lose your money if it's sitting in the savings account. At the same time, of course, if you're buying the top of Bitcoin, if you bought it at 69,000, you're going to be down a bit right now. But if you're looking over the years, over 10 years, anything could happen. But based on the past, it's extremely likely that Bitcoin is going to continue to significantly rise in value and outperform other assets. It has many things going for it. One major thing is the fact that it's only 21 million that's ever going to be created. So nation states, El Salvador bought some, Central African Republic just adopted it as legal tender. There's a number of congressmen, senators, congresswomen in the US that are pushing for adoption of either lowering or wiping out the taxes paid on capital gains for Bitcoin, or even adopting it as legal tender. So these discussions are now actually happening in government circles. 5 years ago, it was just in circles of anarchists and libertarians and computer programmers kind of speaking in their mother's basements, right? It wasn't really a legitimate, serious conversation, and now it is. So those are some things I think are important to consider if you haven't included Bitcoin in your investment plans. Again, not a financial advisor. This is just the general market I'm looking at.
Over at the Conscious Conservative Network, we're very interested in teaching economics and protecting economics. Over at the Felicia Killing Foundation, which is the larger business that the movement is under, we actually have virtual workshops and teach people how to use the virtual space, because we know how making businesses on Etsy and Shopify, and what I'm doing here with this podcast is how people started using the internet to build businesses. How can cryptocurrency lift people out of poverty? You said that's one of your missions, is to get people out of debt. Me personally, I was more doing financial coaching, doing like the Dave Ramsey snowballing method. But how can we incorporate into either our lexicon now and our way of thinking for the future of how to dig people out of poverty, how do we add cryptocurrency as something to our arsenal? What does cryptocurrency offer that the others don't? How can people utilize, especially people digging themselves out of like credit card debt and things like that? So how does cryptocurrency play in that situation?
Great question. So I would say twofold, because to get someone out of poverty or out of a lot of debt is a complex situation. You obviously need to pay down their debt or figure out ways of making more income. Cryptocurrency, as compared to, okay, I mentioned inflation, 8.5%. If people are saving their savings in something that's being wiped out, they're never going to get out, right? The way to wealth, building generational wealth, becoming, even not even becoming a millionaire, but let's say as a goal of becoming a millionaire, that's a bit on the high end, but there's 19 million millionaires, or excuse me, 21 million millionaires in this country. So 1 out of every 15 Americans. So not everyone's there, but it's not that impossible. It's not like becoming a billionaire or being, the greatest, you don't have to be LeBron James or Michael Jordan. It's a bit of a more realistic goal. So from a perspective, if you have no disposable income on the one end and you need help, there's actually 2 apps you can set up, and you can actually have a little lottery and you can win Bitcoin every single day. And those are lolly.com, which we should provide the links at the end. The other one is the Choice app. Right, on lolly.com, there's a little faucet, we call a faucet, little website. I found this recently. Of course, 5-10 years ago, there was someone giving out, 5 Bitcoin every day on the website to try to, back when Bitcoin was, worth a couple bucks, right? So we're not there anymore, but it does look on the trend it's going that we still are early. You get some Bitcoin now, it's going to be more valuable in 5-10 years. I see that as a 10-year plan, at least, if not more. Okay, lolly.com, you get a little bit every day. You can also, on internet purchases, and now, in fact, you're going to Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, you can connect to your debit card. You start to get Bitcoin back every day. So for someone that doesn't have disposable income to invest, obviously telling them to invest in crypto is, it's not appropriate, right? They don't have any money to invest, but they can immediately start accumulating some there. And the Choice app is essentially a retirement account where you can set up a retirement account on your own. I think you need $100 to start it, or you might not even need any money to start it, but if you get $100 to start it, get someone with the link, you get $50. And then they also have a faucet where you have a chance to win. It's a lottery, like you don't win every day, but you actually have a chance to win more Bitcoin. So you can maybe get a few bucks a month in Bitcoin. So I would recommend really everybody has access to those as long as you have a smartphone. If you're watching the show, you probably have access to a computer. So I would get them on that. There's also a, kind of political solution. I'm here talking to you because I'm also fiscally conservative. I think, the best system involves a smaller government, spending less money. It's kind of like because the more money a government spends to solve the problems of the people, the more a government needs to spend, the more inflation, the more people's savings go to zero. So if the government can somehow, it's obviously a difficult problem, but if it can become smaller and spend less money and inflate the currency less, it gives people more of a chance to catch up and do it on their own steam. So I'm a strong believer in helping people, helping them up. Obviously, they have to lift themselves up by their own bootstraps eventually. Sometimes you need to give them a helping hand. If there are government services out there that are useful, obviously use them. There's small business loans, various things. I'm not saying that we should wipe out welfare. Obviously, if people are hungry and need support, that's where you're at. You're gonna obviously have to accept the support. But so on the one end, I plan to work out different products that can help people learn and get into careers like, tech careers or other things that they can help increase their income, because that's kind of the first step. But everyone has access to these apps. You can start getting Bitcoin. You can start experiencing using it. And I would recommend, obviously, people that are very well off, introduce it to some people. Get them a wallet on their phone, send them $50 in Bitcoin. I was in Lebanon. I'm trying to introduce family. That's what you do. You have to kind of pay forward. So that's one way that anybody can access to it. And then if you are fortunate enough and you are, have some disposable income, the first priority is, of course, paying down high interest debt because that's what can really get you. If you can get your credit score cleaned up, you still have a bit of disposable income. It's imperative that you start to invest some based on the financial direction of what our government and really every government in the developed world, right, is doing is just solving problems by printing money. We get into more societal issues that, education being behind why people can't solve things, et cetera. But the fact is, if you are making more money, then you need, it's imperative that you live below your means and you start to invest. So Bitcoin is one of the areas that people who are interested in a more growth perspective, like they're trying to grow their wealth, people in kind of our age group, from the mid 20s to the mid 40s are generally interested in growing their wealth. The younger ones are not quite there yet, and the older ones are interested in preserving whatever wealth they still have. So it is a more volatile asset than to the stock market or obviously a savings account, but the gain, if you're willing to hold on for the next 10 years, based on the last 10 years and the other economic factors I see, the trust in governments, their spending and devaluing of the fiat currencies, the US dollar, the euro, every other currency, right? It seems like really a safety net against that devaluation of people's money.
What percentage, and this is not financial advice, but what percentage were you guys aiming for to teach people to, like, is it part of just a holistic investment account? Like you have, your CDs, your IRAs, you have all of these other things, and then you have a category for crypto. Is that how you want people to break it down? Like break it down as part of a holistic of your whole assets, like houses, real estate, all of that?
I think it needs to be done on an individual basis, but what I will say is this. Fidelity Investments, one of the biggest asset managers in the world. I think they have trillions of dollars. They've just adjusted their 401k plan, the retirement account plan, for certain corporations, and they plan to roll this out with more to enable them to invest 20% in Bitcoin. So everyone's strategy is different. I personally have a lot more than 20% invested in Bitcoin. I'm probably closer to 60%. I do have some stocks and I do have some things, but essentially inflation's at 8.5%. So if you're keeping your money in a savings account, even a money market account, even a CD, even bonds, you're losing tremendous amounts of money. So it's not saving at all. You're literally losing money. So I would, aside from having, you need to have some amount of liquidity for immediate needs. You have your rent and housing payment, a couple of months in advance, emergency funds, so you can live. Beyond that, it's time to consider investing. A really conservative way to look at it, the S&P 500 has gained an average of 10% for the last almost 100 years. I think they track it back to 1926. Gains an average of 10% per year. If you put in, this is a bit high for some, but bear in mind, you put in 20,000 a year for 20 years, with that will work out to about $1 million. So that is kind of obviously you have a good amount of income coming in at that point. That's a strategy. Bitcoin over the last 10 years has grown about 100% per year. Obviously, as it matures, that figure is going to go a bit lower, but I expect it to significantly outperform all other assets. So if you're putting a portion of your income in Bitcoin, or if you're not putting a portion of your income in Bitcoin every month, I would recommend you learn more about Bitcoin.
Awesome. Can you explain to me, because I think I get it, but I'm not sure. NFTs, are those digital? That's not the digital art. What exactly is NFTs? Is that different? It's not a coin. What exactly is that?
Great question. So a let me start with fungible token, right? Fungible means you can exchange it easily for something just like it. It's replaceable, like a $20 bill, a gallon of gasoline, Bitcoin, Ethereum, like a cryptocurrency token. One Bitcoin is no different than any other Bitcoin. A non-fungible token is also a record on a blockchain like Bitcoin, right? That's the kind of computer network. It's called a blockchain, a decentralized network. A non-fungible token is just a token that's unique, like there's no other token like it. So you can attach that token to a piece of digital art, which a lot of artists have done. They've attached the ownership. It's essentially a signature on a computer. The database could be compared to like an Excel database, right? But an extremely pumped up version of an Excel database, right? So your record is permanently recorded that you own that thing, it was created on that date. So that can be attached to a piece of art, that can be attached to a property deed in real estate, that can be attached to a skin in a video game, that can be attached to physical world art. It's essentially a token that shows ownership, it shows when it was created, and it shows every time ownership is transferred. So it can be a useful token. Artists have been selling their art, become, a lot of hype in that area of attaching that to an NFT. So a lot of people see NFTs as JPEGs or art, digital art, but essentially it's an ownership token on a blockchain that's unique. You could attach even a concert ticket, a driver's license. These things could be potentially created as NFTs or minted, as the word is, as an NFT.
What would be the purpose of doing that instead of just doing, the regular way we do that? Is it more secure? Is it more proof? Is it more like, yeah, I really own this Leonardo da Vinci painting, it's really mine? Like, is that what the reason is? It just shows it's more secure. Is that why people are doing it? Because a lot of people are like leery of all of this, and they're like, I don't trust none of this. And even though I'm like, you shouldn't trust the government, but that's just my conservatism coming out. But so why would you advise anybody to get NFTs, or you would tell them? What would you tell them?
I think it's a new subject. NFTs were first, in practical use created in 2017. Technology was created in 2016, but the first NFTs were around 2017. Most NFTs that you see are built on Ethereum. I think it's a fascinating technology. It would be in the category of very speculative from an investment perspective. If you look at the very wealthy who have a lot of money to invest, right? They assign 1 to 5%. Their financial manager would tell them assign 1 to 5% to art, right? Like fine art. You could perhaps include NFTs in a similar category. So if I've got $10,000 in the bank, it's not a good idea to spend $10,000 in NFT. Hope I can resell it tomorrow for more. NFTs are very not liquid, not fungible by name, right? Someone would need to buy it, even though it has an assigned value. So I would, from an investment perspective, I would consider it extremely speculative. I've never invested in NFT. I have been given NFTs by a number of artists that have helped. I've been studying a lot about NFTs. So I would say in terms of buying one for purely investment purposes, I would consider it only invest what you're willing to lose, but I mean that really in the fullest sense of the word. Like literally expect it's going to zero if you're going to invest in NFT. I do think that NFTs are an advancement of technology. I believe NFTs are the future, are going to be an intrinsic part of the future of entertainment. Anything to do with musical artists, movies, concert ticketing. I think NFTs are very useful in those fields. And NFTs will be used. I think we're still at a very experimental stage. I think if an artist or digital artist is very successful and a good artist and have fans that want to buy what they want, they'll buy their NFTs. They'll also buy their just digital art that's not an NFT, right? So I would say that it's a very exciting, very speculative area.
Well, how do you feel about the government leaning in on this cryptocurrency stuff? We already seen that Biden had hired people to go after like $700. People were worried about their Cash App and their PayPal and things like that. But how do you think the government is looking at cryptocurrency? Are they looking at it as, hey, that's another revenue stream for us to tax? Or are they trying to look like, hey, they're getting away from paying taxes on this, so they're gonna put all their extra income into Bitcoin, and now we can't grab that? Or what do you think the wheels are turning in DC about cryptocurrency, and should we be worried, or should that make us put more money in cryptocurrency?
That's a great question. I was hoping you'd ask that. So there's a few trends I want to cover here. There's Bitcoin. Obviously, there's other crypto, but I'll just talk about Bitcoin to keep it simple, and then the central bank digital currencies, which is essentially a trend I'm very concerned about. As well,
coin.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is, right?
Oh,
yeah. So, look, the current state of politics in this country, you have, for the most part, the Democrat and the Republican parties, putting aside any other ulterior motives, just assuming their basic way of handling things. We have problems in the society. The Democrats attempt to solve those problems through a government and funding the government more. For the most part, the more kind of conservative financial side, whether you say Republican or Republicans are not conservative, we'll leave that for another day. But the concept is that you lower the taxes, you lower the regulations, and you basically hope that the free market, free enterprise, entrepreneurs solve these problems that we have, right? So I'm more on that side of things, conservative fiscally, where the government would have less regulations. We need to, of course, stop bad actors, criminals. I'm not advocating that we have no government, but as much, in my opinion, bad that large corporations do, I think the worst and the largest corporation is the government. So
yep.
I think that, and at the same time, of course, we as the people, government's an idea we created. So I don't go extreme on that way either. Like, we need to do something about it if we don't like it. So essentially, the Democrats, with their system, they need to fund the government. So the way you fund the government is you either print more money or you charge more taxes. So I think they're looking at Bitcoin more as a means of collecting taxes. So that's the simplicity of it. In other jurisdictions, there's other concerns that I have. The concept that they're afraid of a money that can't be controlled, I think, is something that politicians from, there's certain urge of government to control the people, right? From all political parties, and it's worse in places like China, where you have a totalitarian government. They've come out with a central bank digital currency. They also have a social credit score, so if you do something wrong, they can they give you some money, but they take it away if you're being bad, right? So I'm extremely leery of such a thing. I'm extremely leery of the government creating, essentially it would be the Federal Reserve creating a digital currency. You have your digital currency account directly with the federal government, with the Federal Reserve, excuse me. Let's say you have a speeding ticket, they could just push a button, you got your money withdrawn from your account. That could essentially, if that was created, that would undermine the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the concept of innocent until proven guilty. That would actually potentially exacerbate some of the problems we have in the inner cities, where minorities and people of color feel they're being unfairly targeted by police departments, right? Imagine you won't even have to stop them. You just kind of clock the license plate. You just, you need some more funding.
Money from their account.
Yeah, and then the burden's on them to go to court, go through an arduous legal process that they already can't deal with. They're already under pressure. They got some kids to deal with. They got bills. They don't have time. They have 3 jobs. Whatever their situation is, they're already, the people that have trouble with that are going to have more trouble with that. So I'm very concerned about such a situation, or even the concept that if you have all your money in there, they could literally decide, like with Canada, hey, you're bad. We've decided what you're doing is illegal. We're going to sign an executive order so we don't have to go through due process to prove it's illegal. We're going to ruin your life, and then you can come back and try to fix it later and wait for a year or whatever the government red tape process is. So I'm extremely concerned with central bank digital currencies. why I think it's important that we all call our congressmen and women and senators and advocate for as mild as possible regulations on Bitcoin and no central bank digital currency at all.
And they're not going to sell it. It's going to come through some kind of way that, we're going to make the digital currency to save the whales or help babies or stop climate change. It's going to come then, why don't we get our own coin to lower gas prices? Here, use our coin, and then it's cheaper than using a dollar. Or I don't know. They're going to set it up in some way that it's beneficial to us. Not to us, to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be beneficial to
It's going to sound beneficial, right? It's going to be sold really well, right? I will tell you one thing. There's a lot of questions on the energy debate about Bitcoin. They've been overblown. A lot of honest left-wing people who very deeply care about the environment have thrown their support behind Bitcoin. They look at the facts. They look at the numbers. Frankly, the concerns are overblown. The World Economic Forum, there's a billionaire that created a cryptocurrency called XRP. He's from Ripple. He spent $5 million to launch a campaign to tell Bitcoin to change its code so it spent less energy. That goes back into the argument of energy versus what's the energy for. The other thing is that Bitcoin can particularly be used to essentially mitigate energy use, either whether it's with greener energy or look at the fact that a huge portion of the energy we actually make gets wasted. So it's used in unique situations to actually support the energy grid. So it's how you use it. There's a lot of environmentalists, a lot of very heavy supporters of renewable energy that are also very heavy supporters of Bitcoin because they've done the homework, they've done the math. They see that, again, it's a democratic currency. You cannot print more of it. If we're using Bitcoin, the government can't just decide to print a billion more Bitcoin and now we're poor and the government's the only rich one. That's the thing. It evens the playing field a little bit. It doesn't solve all the world's problems. It doesn't fix everything, but it gives hope and it levels the playing field a bit.
So they already looked at the energy consumption, even though these governments are trying to push us off of fossil fuels to renewable energy like wind and solar and everything. And they said that, we don't think that Bitcoin creation or the computers and all that is not putting strain on our electrical grid. Because I thought they had some kind of situation in China with them wanting to kick Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. Or is that just their government's excuse to get rid of cryptocurrency so that they can keep pushing the yen, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the yuan. Look, there's a geopolitical trend right now where governments are attempting to use financial censorship as a weapon. With Bitcoin, that is not so easy, right? Because it is a decentralized network. So, without getting into too deep, I believe it's much more of an ideological point and a political power point that China did actually ban Bitcoin. They banned mining. They banned Bitcoin transactions. I think it was the biggest mistake they've made in their history as under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, other than being communist in the first place was, of course, the biggest, most basic mistake. But aside from that, it was a tremendous blunder because it made the United States the largest hub for Bitcoin mining in the world. So as the world more and more adopts a more global shift, they've created, the US dollar has weakened, and China's goal was to make their central bank digital currency, the yuan, replace the dollar as the global reserve asset. So they saw Bitcoin as a block in their way. On the other side, many that are very, patriotic Americans see Bitcoin as a threat dollar. There's many like me that do not see it as a threat, that see it as a complementing system. If people are reaching for some hope, a bit of a balance in power, why not have both? If you give them both options, they'll be much more likely to embrace the dollar and Bitcoin. Right or wrong, the US government has recently multiple times taken the action to seize foreign powers that hold US bonds. So if you're putting your money in my bank and I'm mad at you, so I seize your assets, you're not going to keep putting money in my bank. I don't know how else to put it, right? So
Well, that's just like civil asset forfeiture. You a drug
yeah,
dealer, so they take your whole house and everything just because you
right.
did the crime. Yeah, we already kind of have that already,
Yeah,
somewhat.
yeah. So if I'm your banker, your neighbor sees that I took your money. Your neighbor might not have a problem with you, but they're going to take their money out of my bank as soon as they can because they're like, I don't want that happening to me. So you have a bit of a situation of that happening on a global scale. So I see there's two ways out. One, you have Bitcoin, which is an asset that no country can dominate, manipulate, or control, or you have a kind of a dark digital yuan Chinese Communist Party replacement of the US dollar. So you either have an alternate global system that's controlled by a totalitarian communist government with total surveillance. I mentioned the central bank digital currency, like they could surveil every transaction. It'd be much easier. Bitcoin, you can view the transactions as transparent, but it's a lot less, it's a lot more difficult to control. So I, of course, would rather have a world where, the American nation is still prominent and you have a more democratic, fair system. It does seem to be weakening the U.S. Global Reserve currency status. So I'm hoping it's more of a shift to an even playing field with Bitcoin than a shift to a alternate Chinese yuan digital currency, which is a really scam. It's really a Trojan horse. They're giving it out. Chinese people. I mean, the Chinese government has a system of social credit score. There's 21 million Chinese that weren't allowed to leave the country or travel on an airplane or a train because they were on a bad list of people that the government doesn't approve of their actions. So that's extremely dystopian. That should never be allowed here. Canada was trying to kind of test the waters with that.
Oh, they definitely was. We were testing it a little bit too.
Yeah, testing the waters
Mhm.
here. So if you get the idea, if there becomes a, kind of permanent stimulus check, a universal basic income, you're getting a check from the government every month, more and more people are going to be dependent on it, then all of a sudden issue's going to come up, whichever government's in power, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, you do something that, you're on the bad list, they can just cut off that money, they can remove it from your account, they can freeze your account. That's not something any government should have the ability to do. I'm deeply concerned with that potential future, even if it's done under a benevolent government that never has plans of doing that. The fact that they could do that, there's going to be a government in the future that will. Even if everyone in the government's benevolent today, eventually they're not going to be. And of course, everyone's not. Most people that go into government, they're trying to help, but as a system, it's best where the people have some ability to control their lives. So if you've got your Bitcoin on your own wallet, and they've got this, universal basic income, and they cut it off, or they want to cut you off, you don't have to, submit to the government. You don't have to do what you're told or have your children starve, right? Because you're going to protect your family, you're going to feed your family in front of everything else. So a lot of people wind up doing things that they, were not willing to do before because it was their livelihood. This subject, I'm not going to get into the medical sides or my views on that, but with the vaccinations, right? Many people, the lady with ESPN, black lady, was very upset, publicly announced, she was forced to take it. It was against her beliefs, but she's going to lose her job and her career. So she wasn't willing to do that. So that's, like you said, the U.S. is testing the waters with that. So imagine your whole livelihood. That's not something the government should have more control over. They should have less control. Government's necessary. It's got some good things that it does, it could be doing, but it should not have total control of your personal life, your personal finances, your opinions. That's extremely dangerous. Bitcoin is a path, a direction, essentially of more spread out power. Government issued digital currencies are a path of more totalitarian control, and I'm very weary of it. So I support Bitcoin, obviously as an investor myself, full disclosure, right? But on the more ideological side, or more freedom side, and I think that is patriotic. I think you can be an American patriot, you can be a conservative, and there's many, that support Bitcoin. And there's people they're Democrats and left wing that support Bitcoin because it makes sense. As I mentioned on Twitter the other day, it makes sense for the right, it makes sense for the left, because it makes sense. Period. That's something most intelligent people that have good intentions can agree on, and it's worth looking into now. We're not so early like we were 10 years ago, but I still see, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but it does appear Bitcoin has a lot more room to grow. And it's not too late. You can buy any fraction of a Bitcoin, by the way. You can buy $10 of Bitcoin, $100.
Yes,
You don't
I
have to
found that
buy
out.
a whole Bitcoin.
I thought you had to buy the whole 40,000 at first. I was like, I
Yeah.
got that kind of dough, but then I was the I guess they call Stoshis or whatever.
Satoshis, yeah.
Yeah, they're parts of it. I was like, well, I can buy that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was playing around, when AMC was going off and popping off, and
Yeah.
GameStop was popping off, people was going in and out and going out, in and out. I was doing that a little bit. So I was like,
Yeah.
why not? So I got a little bit of Doge, a little bit of Shibu. Got
Yeah.
stuff just floating around. I don't expect none of them to do anything big and put my kids to college or nothing like that. But I thought it would be fun to actually get in and get out and, just to see what it was like. And so I really appreciate you coming on an episode of Miss Pinky Thoughts to talk about this. Can you tell people where to find you? What was your websites again? So that way I can put it on the Twitter as well, so people can find you and find your resources. As you said, you want to educate people, and we love educating, so I'm going to put that out there too.
Thank you, Miss Pinky. It's been an honor being on here. So again, thelatestblock.com. You can subscribe at thelatestblock.com/subscribe. You also find me on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Just Google my name, Alexandre Lores. You got the spelling there correctly. And Medium as well. But it's all free there on thelatestblock.com. So, yeah, please follow me. Ask me any questions. Message out to me. DM me. I'm happy to answer any questions and help you learn about Bitcoin, how it can help you achieve your financial goals and achieve more financial freedom, because I want to see, more people that don't, eventually don't need help from others or help from the government, that they can stand on their own 2 feet and they're not shackled by economic factors, as so many are, especially in a time right now where there's, pretty bad inflation, worse than 40 years, right?
Yeah, and that 8.5%, whoo, that's probably a number that's not even the actual number. So if you're putting your money in the savings account right now, I'm not a financial advisor, but you just might need to go look at your stuff
Yeah.
again, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now. Thank you so much for being on the show. This is a new episode of Mrs. Pinky Thoughts. I am your host, Nicole Pinkston. I just want to let you guys know that we are doing another virtual summit over at the Conscious Conservative Media Network. This Friday, we have guest speakers like Sonny Johnson, Him, Way. We have Logic Supreme. We're going to talk a little bit more politics this week. Last time we talked about more for the women, but now it's men and women, and everybody going to come on through. You can register for free. The website is at the bottom around the screen, consciousconservativemedia.net. Also, if this show was a blessing to you, why don't you hit me up either at my PayPal or Cash App to keep this show going. Thank you again, Alex. You can catch him over on Twitter, and we see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank you.